All right, let's get into Brandon Aiyuk, all right? He demanded a trade. Here's my Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch interpretation to all of this if they were texting. John Lynch hits up Kyle Shanahan and says, hey, do you see this? Brandon Aiyuk's demanding a trade. And Shanahan says, yeah, I saw that just came down. There's a pause. And then Lynch says, want to play some golf later this afternoon? Yeah, sure, why not? Like, this is such a non-starter for them. Like, all right, you want to trade.
Possibly.
Look, yeah. That's nice.
They're not going to sweat
In terms of strategy, what is Brandon Aiyuk and his team thinking here?
I mean, I hope they don't move him.
They're going to move him. They'll move him. The only way they'll move him, if it makes sense to the 49ers, they hold the keys to all of this.
Well, I mean, they need him to be playing this year, though, too.
Like, and so does Brandon Aiyuk if he wants to get paid.
And to a degree, I think so does Brock Purdy. We had Phil Simms on a few weeks ago, and I remember he said, Brock's going to get paid off of a big part of what he does this year. So Brock, he's looking to get that reset the market deal that Jed York says he's going to get. If he's going to do that, he needs his weapons this year. And, the Niners are already kind of behind the eight ball, so to speak, coming in off that Super Bowl loss hangover. We already know how difficult that could be for teams. It's basically, unless the only teams in the last 30 years to lose the Super Bowl and then get back to it had either a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes under center. Mahomes didn't even get back after they lost the Super Bowl. They lost in the AFC title game to Joe Burrow. So getting back to the Super Bowl after losing it is really, really hard. And so they need everything clicking on all cylinders if they're going to do that. And this could be the third year in a row.
Wait, just a quick side note. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry to take you out of your train of thought. What do you think has a better chance of happening? Chiefs three-peating or the Niners getting back to a Super Bowl?
Oh, geez. Unfortunately, it might be the Chiefs three-peating. They're just I'm spacing. Who's the guy they got at the end of the first round out of Texas? What was the receiver's name? I'm pointing at Ken, hoping that he can bail me out here. I don't. Okay, the fact he doesn't remember off the top of his head makes me feel a little bit better. I'm blanking on the name, but yeah, the Chiefs. I mean, last year was probably the year for the Niners to make it happen, and even in the Super Bowl, they had so many opportunities.
Xavier Worthy, by the way.
Xavier, I knew it started with an X. Xavier Worthy, adding him. I mean, that's basically kind of they're getting the production that they were missing with Tyreek Hill. And we saw how good they are without Tyreek Hill. They've won 2 Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill. And now Mahomes has got a deep threat again who can catch the ball. They won the Super Bowl last year, Dan, with Travis Kelce at age 35 and singing Taylor Swift songs as their number one pass catching option. They're going to be better this year. They're going to be scarier this year. They have a scary defense. And they're also the Chiefs. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, unfortunately, a three-peat is more likely than the Niners getting back to the Super Bowl.
When you think about Brandon Aiyuk asking for a trade, it's kind of like me throughout this show just randomly saying, I like cookies. I like cookies. There's your drop, by the way. I mean, seriously, you would look at me going, all right, that's nice. Nice, Dan. Thanks for sharing. What do you want me to do with that? What the hell? Like, the fact that he wants a trade, if this was just prior to the draft, maybe we could do something with it. At this juncture, I mean, maybe you're posturing, but that's not moving the needle in one direction or the other. The fact that you're asking for a trade, the Niners aren't going to trade you. They will if somebody steps to the forefront and says, I'm going to give you, 2 number ones, 2 first-round picks.
Would they, though? I mean, I think we got Mike Florio.
Maybe not, yeah.
I think they got Mike Florio saying something kind of different. Ken, can we play that, please?
It's funny. He'd been very compliant. He hadn't asked to be traded. There was a time before the draft where, as they were haggling over what he is worth, his agent was given permission to see if other teams would pay him what he was looking for. And at the time, it was $28 million a year. It's probably higher than that now because the market's changed. I'm told there were 5 teams that were ready to go and give him what he wanted, what the 49ers wouldn't give him. But they couldn't work out a deal with the 49ers for a trade. And, from the 49ers perspective, this is where it gets a little screwy. You've got 5 other teams that were willing to pay him what he wants and give you something to get him. Why won't you just pay him what he wants? So he's taken the stand now. He's asked to be traded. We'll see if he shows up for camp. But one thing about the 49ers, we've seen guys, you got to be the squeaky wheel to get paid. You got to be Deebo Samuel, demand to be traded for weeks, and you get paid. Nick Bosa, hold out until right before the start of the season. You get paid. I think Aiyuk is shifting into, I'm done being a nice guy here because that didn't give me anything. I'm going to start agitating to either get the contract I deserve or get traded to a team that'll pay me. I think one thing we can all agree on, $14.1 million is criminally low for a guy who was a second-team All-Pro, second in the league in yards per target. He had 1,300-plus receiving yards on only 105 targets last year. Imagine what he could do if he was getting the ball thrown his way 180 times like C.D. Lamb.
Lot to unpack there.
Well, that's just not fair, what he just said at the end there. They're not offering him $14.1 million. That's his rookie contract.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you're Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, you're coming in the NFL, I mean, they always say you got to get your bag, but the other thing is you got to play every play like it's your last, because you never know. Any play could be your last. If you're Brandon Aiyuk playing on a one-year deal, basically, with no insurance after this season, I mean, Dan, have you been watching Receiver on Netflix?
No.
Oh, well, I'm a couple episodes in, and already you could see just the punishment these guys take. Devontae Adams, he's been kind of the low-key, him and Jimmy G have kind of been the low-key stars of the series, because you get your Devontae.
Is this like quarterback last year?
Yeah, it's like quarterback, but it's with receivers. It's following Debo, Kittle.
Because Kirk Cousins came out of that.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and why am I spacing on the fifth name? Amon-Ra St. Brown. But you see, like Devontae Adams, he's like, yeah, I've never been hit like this before, because Jimmy G is just leaving him open in the middle of the field. For as good as Kirk Cousins looked in quarterback, that's how bad Jimmy G is looking in receiver right now. But these guys, they go through all this punishment. Now, Brock doesn't leave Aiyuk open to get hit that as much as Jimmy does with his receivers. But at the same time, like, it's the NFL. Like, one wrong turn, your knee explodes. Yeah. You catch the pass here, you get hit in the side, your ribs are shattered. You're not the same guy anymore. If you're Brandon Aiyuk, you're playing on just a $14 million deal and nothing else afterwards. This isn't so much about the money. This is so much about, like, I need to secure my bag while I still have the value to get that bag. Could you imagine if he decided to just play on this fifth-year option, be a potential free agent next year, but then he, blows out his knee in week 7? His value's torched now for the rest of his career. That's millions and hundreds of millions of dollars possibly that he could be losing by not signing that contract now. So I get it. Brandon Aiyuk, you got to get your bag right now. I'm totally on board with that part. So as far as that criminally low aspect, I hear what you're saying. It is his rookie deal, but that's far below what he's worth, I believe, to this offense.
Oh, yeah, and the 49ers are offering him much more than that. They're giving him, the $25 million reportedly. It's just about whether or not he wants to take it. This is all business. It's all bartering, right? Mm-hmm. They don't think he's worth the $35 million that Justin Jefferson just really put the market on its ear. But, somewhere in between, hopefully there's a happy medium that they can arrive at. But the 49ers aren't offering him $14 million, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So Florio talking about how this is criminal.
Well, I don't think he mentioned it like that. I think it's more just the fact that he's playing on just a fifth year of his contract that's $14 million.
But it won't be, because they're going to offer him much more than that. He'll play. He's either going to...
No, I see it as just he thinks that Aiyuk needs to be paid more.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we all do.
Yeah, we all
agree.
Not
$14 million wide receiver. I get that. The other thing that I would say when it comes to Florio that I would disagree with is that...
I said what I said.
As far as being the squeaky wheel in order to get paid, I would say that the 49ers take care of their players. Trent Williams is the highest paid left tackle. Nick Bosa is... Nobody makes as much money as Bosa.
Well,
nobody makes as much money as...
He had to squeak a little bit, though, to get that money,
But it's all part of it. At the end of the day, you got taken care of. And the 49ers... None of those guys left, despite the threats of Deebo Samuel, despite, Nick Bosa holding out, going into the season, essentially. Fred Warner was in a lengthy holdout. Those guys got taken care of at the end of the day. They're 49ers, and they're also playing for a handsome sum. So this idea that the 49ers are doing anybody wrong is sort of my takeaway from Florio. I would thoroughly disagree that San Francisco's on the other end of the spectrum and actually pays and takes care of its stars.
Yeah, but isn't it also kind of concerning? This is the third year in a row the Niners are entering training camp with a key member of this team not participating. Deebo had the hold in 2022, and he was not in Deebo shape when the season started. I mean, Deebo was in incredible shape to begin with, but he wasn't quite Deebo Samuel shape just yet. Nick Bosa, he got to a slow start this year.
That hurt him.
The whole thing's like, he's always ready to go. He's always working out. It took him a couple. He still, was really good this year, but it was a slow start. And then at the end, he kind of ran out of gas a little bit. I mean, he's huffing and puffing on the sideline of the Super Bowl in overtime there. So this is a third year in a row in a very key season for this organization. You talk about this 49ers window, how open it is. Like last year, we were saying Super Bowl or bust. I was kind of more in the Super Bowl or figure it out next year. This year is Super Bowl or bust in that if you don't win, like you're going to be changing this roster up. Because guys are getting more and more expensive. Brock Purdy's going to be getting really expensive next year. So like you got to maximize this year.
Yeah.
And the fact they have this cloud around Aiyuk now kind of concerns me.
Yeah, I would, to your point, say that's the only area of leverage that I think Brandon Aiyuk has is because what it is that you just laid out. They don't want this to go into camp. That if Aiyuk has any leverage in this back and forth and this stare down with the 49ers front office, it's the fact that they know they want Aiyuk, although Aiyuk is still, by all accounts and reports, is working out at the facilities. But they want Aiyuk ready to go come week one, and they don't want this prolonged. So, I would agree with you there. But this just comes – the idea of him wanting a trade is a non-starter. And I don't know why was it – again, is it bluster? Is it what is it? What does that
usually
do?
Probably bluster. Well, what do you make of what Flair said at the beginning? That there were 5 teams that had offers they were willing to throw at Aiyuk. What do you like? There were apparently deals. I'm kind of curious what those deals might have looked like.
That's just that's the bottom line.
Do you think it's the Niners just holding out for a first-round pick?
Yeah, it's San Francisco saying, "Yeah, we'll trade him, but it's got to make sense to us. It's got to." I mean, there is clearly something that they have in mind in terms of what it is that they want in order to trade Aiyuk. It's very similar to Danny Ainge and Laurie Markkinen, which we'll get into in maybe the next segment. Danny Ainge knows exactly the value or what it is that he interprets the value for his star. So as a team, as a front office, you don't compromise that, especially when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk, and you have all his control. So there could have been 20 teams that came in with offers. But if they're below what you deem as the value, then you're not going to move on it.
And everybody be curious to see. I mean, if there was a first-round pick and the Niners still said no, then maybe that's
doubt if it was a first-round pick.
I think the big issues, and Aiyuk kind of hinted at this. He's not hinted at it. He's said it. He basically said, if you signed me earlier, you could have gotten this done. I just want to go through. Here are the extensions that have been signed this year and when they were signed. So Nico Collins down in Houston, he got an extension. It's going to be paying him $24 million a year. He signed that on May 12th. Another one that was done this year, obviously you mentioned the Justin Jefferson one that was done at the beginning of June. That was $35 million a year. Jalen Waddle got his bag on May 30th for about $28 million a year. Then you had A.J. Brown at the end of April. He got $32 million a year. The 2 deals that I think really kind of put the Niners in a difficult spot. On April 15th, tax day, Devontae Smith inked a deal that's going to be paying him $25 million a year. That was on April 15th. And then 9 days later, I think the one that really the Niners kind of got screwed on when this happened was Amon-Ra St. Brown on April 24th, inked a deal that was going to be paying him $30 million a year. I think that's the one. That 9 days, that was your time, I think, to get Aiyuk signed. Because I think $30 million for a receiver is a lot, especially when you might be paying anywhere from $50 to $60 million for your quarterback next year, on top of Debo, on top of Kittle, on top of CMC, on top.
Talanoa Hufanga's got to get paid.
Diamador Lenoir's got to get paid. I think we have it somewhere, Ken. Diamador Lenoir reacted almost in real time to the breaking news of Brandon Aiyuk requesting a trade. It's buried somewhere in our system if you want to go digging for it. If you don't want to, it's totally cool too. But Lenoir, I mean, he's listening to this like he's trying to get paid too. So he's kind of taking notes here of what's going on. You can't pay everybody, and everyone's going to be wanting to get their bag. But I think the Niners, they had a window to sign Aiyuk to a deal that would have been fair. I mean, they're going to pay Debo $28 million a year, but they don't want to give Aiyuk something similar. They had their window. I just think they missed it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. If there's one wart, again, is that they should have done this a lot sooner. And I think in retrospect, the 49ers would admit as much. You know what I like when it comes to free agencies? Philadelphia locks up guys. They're like, let's not even do
Howie
this.
Roseman gets it done, man.
Let's just go. Let's get our guys and not even fool around. The 49ers, typically things don't get done till right about now. And it's just sort of the way they work.
Yeah, Debo, when was Debo? Debo, I think, was during training camp, but Bosa, I mean, it was week 1 when Bosa got done. So, I mean, I want to see this team locked in, ready to go on day one of training camp. It's going to be a slog this year to get back into the playoffs because last year it was Operation One Seed. Then it was Operation Vegas. This year, though, they were at the top of the mountaintop. It was right there, Dan. They were basically a play away from winning the Super Bowl in overtime. But now they got to climb all the way back up there again and then hope to God that Patrick Mahomes is the one waiting for them there when the Super Bowl gets to New Orleans this year. It's going to be tough. They need all cylinders clicking.
It's going to be tough, but when you look at that team, at least on paper, which is a scary thing to do, they're so damn good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're
still the favorites. They got to be the favorites in the NFC right now, just top to bottom. I mean, even with the NFC being as tough as it is right now.
But there is something that happened to that football team, I think, Christmas Day a year ago, where they were so good, they were so dominant. Mm-hmm. And then when the Ravens punched them in the face,
something switched.
Yeah.
Brock was not the same for a while.
They just were not the same team. And even in the playoffs, where they were sort of on borrowed time when you think about Detroit and Green Bay. Mm-hmm. We could talk as much as we want about what happened against Patrick Mahomes in overtime. That was
the first pass that Brock threw against Green Bay almost should have been a pick six.
Yeah. So, and I don't know exactly, and whether it was that game against Baltimore that was sort of emblematic of the changing of the events for that football team, but you could clearly see that it was not the same sort of demeanor of that squad going forward. But again, when you look at McCaffrey and when you look at Debo, and I'll even remove Brandon Aiyuk, and why don't we just do that for the sake of this conversation here in the last 5 minutes of the segment? Let's just say worst case scenario, Brandon Aiyuk is not with his football team. And I know you're going to disagree, I'm still of the belief that they're still very good and do not miss as much of a beat as maybe some people might think.
I don't think I think it's very, very hard to talk Super Bowl if you don't have Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk, he was
Ricky Pearsall being sort of the X factor.
Ricky Pearsall is kind of the great unknown here. I believe he was just put on the PUP list the other week, so he's dealing with he's a little banged up already right now. And he's a tiny dude. Like I'm worried. First hit he takes, he's gonna explode into a million pieces. But you take Brandon Aiyuk off this team, he was the spark plug on this offense. There was a lot of drives that. It's third and long. Oh, it's all right. I guess it's a 3 and out. Then boom, Brock hits Aiyuk on a 12-yard out, and now we're cooking with some hot grease. The one I always remember was the Philly game. They were down 6-0 after the first quarter against the Eagles in Philly, and you're thinking, oh my God, did the Eagles have something here? And then Brock hits Aiyuk coming out the gate in that second quarter. Next thing you know, they're putting the Eagles in their grave where they belong. Aiyuk gets things going for this offense. Brock trusts Aiyuk, and he is really their only legitimate kind of downfield threat. I mean, Kittle can be a downfield threat, but Debo, not really the route runner that you would expect from a downfield threat like that. He's more kind of a catch and run out of the backfield kind of guy. Aiyuk's their only legit deep threat. Juwan Jennings, I don't think is that guy to that extent. So, no, if you took Aiyuk off this team, I think there is a significant step back that we would see.
I think the 49ers at this point are more a sum of their parts. It's similar to that of like Kansas City, as you just laid out. How many times do you take somebody away from that of Patrick Mahomes simply because you can't afford him? Whether it's a wide receiver, and you can go through the list. Whether it's the speedster now with Miami. Tyreek Hill, but when you have, and I know Patrick Mahomes is sort of one of one.
I think, it's because you're the Patrick Mahomes factor there.
It is the Patrick Mahomes factor, but I also think that we're sort of underselling what it is that Kyle Shanahan has built, which is not predicated around one guy. It certainly wasn't around Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not Brock Purdy, and it's certainly not Brandon Aiyuk. I think that there's more of a system in place. That is Christian McCaffrey, that it's running the football, and then it's also having Kittle get into the seam routes, is Debo doing his thing, it's the defense being dominant, that it's more of a collective effort as opposed to, yes, you need your stars. And right now, when we parse these things out, we think about these players on an individual basis, and we begin to, we're like, without Brandon Aiyuk, you can't do fill in the blank. But I think once the season begins to start, you realize that there are so many weapons, and that the way Kyle Shanahan outthinks and is so innovative that it's more about the system than it is sort of the player, so to speak.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the players kind of make the system too, in a sense, so to speak. I mean, part of what makes like the Debo CMC pairing so scary is I always think like it's like a cheat code when you line those two up in the backfield together. Because if you're a defense, you're thinking like, what am I supposed to do? Because you could, Brock fakes a handoff to Debo, gives it to CMC. It's you're kind of, if you're the defense, you're kind of in trouble no matter what he does with the ball there. But when you start taking away options, though, the defense, it's easier to kind of focus on certain things. And I think when you do take away that deep threat, that only deep threat, then all of a sudden Kittle is kind of your best deep threat. So when he's lining up, you're knowing, there's your deep threat right now because it's probably not going to be Debo. Christian McCaffrey, he's more kind of, you're checking down to him on those Texas routes there. And then if Ricky Pearsall turns out if he's balling out in camp and he's looking like a guy who can absolutely fill in for Brandon Aiyuk, that'd be awesome. That's great. That will certainly help. But I think we kind of underrate Brandon Aiyuk had 1,300
he's a hell of a
1,300 yards, 130 receptions on a team that threw the ball the least in football. I mean, the numbers that if you put him on, Philly if you put him in Las Vegas, or if you're in Kansas City, if he had it, or in Dallas, if you were giving him, a chance to get, 180, targets a year, this dude, he can put up big numbers. The reason his numbers are what they are is because, like you said, you have all those other options. I just think we really underrate just how important Brandon Aiyuk really is for Brock Purdy and this offense.
I would agree with you, and that I would agree with you to this level that Brock Purdy is really sort of the X factor, because that you never know who you can develop a rapport with, and so Brock Purdy, for whatever reason, he locked in on Brandon Aiyuk, and those guys have that symbiotic relationship. So the last thing you want to do to Brock Purdy, not necessarily Brandon Aiyuk, but Brock Purdy is saying we're taking away your number one target, because clearly you can see that there is a chemistry that's developed between those two. But hey, listen, when you talk about rookie wide receivers and Ricky Pearsall, first name Puka, last name, Puka Nacua, right? Yeah. Puka Nacua. So there you go. A rookie wide receiver can make a huge statement, especially a kid that was drafted in a much lower round than that of one Ricky Pearsall.